Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome to this lesson. In this video I'm going to show you how to understand musical intervals and why they are important. I wouldn't teach anything to do with music theory if I didn't think it would be of value to you. Pretty much everything to do with music theory is going to help you become a better musician and composer anyway. A few years ago I did like 2 videos on like an intro to music theory, which sort of taught notes, keys and chords. Now intervals are sort of the next thing that I would teach personally, and that doesn't mean that like we've gone up in levels, like level 1 is notes, then keys, chords, then intervals, because intervals is actually really easy to understand, and I'm going to show you that. So I've got a sheet full of stuff, and what an interval is a space between 2 points, right? So if you have a tape measure or a ruler and you have 0 centimeters and you go to 1 centimeter, that is a space. The interval between those 2 points is an interval, it's a space. If you go from 0 to 2 centimeters, that is a different interval, and that is all musical intervals is. They're all just labels for all the different spaces from whichever note you start on. So like if you start on C and you go to a different note each time, each length, each interval, each space has a different name. So let's look at that. So if we start as C, and you say you play a C on the piano and you just play the same key again, right? That is called a perfect unison. Now a perfect unison is pretty much just the name, the label for 0, for you essentially doing nothing, right? 0, even though it's nothing, it's still a number and it still has a name, which is 0. But again, in this case, it just means that you didn't go anywhere. You didn't actually create any length, right? Because you just played a C and you just played a C again. Whereas if you go from C to C sharp, that is where you actually start creating a space, right? And that is the smallest space that you can create. Now that space is called a minor second, right? That is when you just go up 1 note. It's the smallest thing that you can do, the smallest amount of movement. Now if you go from a C to a D, that is a major second, right? So now you've went up an extra note, like, so that's the next interval along, and that is, as I say, a major second. If you go from a C to a D sharp, that is a minor third. Right, if you go from a C to a D, sorry, a C to an E, that is a major third. Right, if you go from a C to a B, that is a major 7th. If you go from a C up to a G, that is a perfect 5th. Right, all you do is just count up the notes. All of these are just numbers. They just mean go up an extra note each time, just 1 note, a semitone. Which is why when you go up however many pitches that you do, you come to whichever interval that is, and then these numbers say how many pitches you need to go up in order to reach that interval. One thing that you need to remember is you don't count the note that you start on itself, because like you need to count up 1 note to get to a minor second, right? You need to have an extra note, so C to a C sharp, right? So if you count C and C sharp, that's 2 notes. But if you go up 2 notes, you're actually at a major second, which means you need to go from like C to D, 2 notes, C sharp and D. Like if you go up a perfect 5th, it's 7 notes, right? But if you count it with the C, like C to G is a perfect 5th, but if you count it with the C, that'll be 8 notes, not 7. Like C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, C, 8 instead of 7, because you're not supposed to count the first one. Now, what I have here is some extra information that will help you sort of just get to whatever interval it is that you're trying to get to. What I have here is the C major key, right? C, D, E, F, G, A, B, right? Any major key that you write out, well, first of all, I'll say that all of these notes, right, they are always like in C major, you know, they don't change. Like a G is a perfect fifth from C, and E is a major third, and F is a perfect fourth, right? Now, no matter which major key you write out, because each major key is spelt with the same intervals, so if you write out like G major, B major, whatever, like the fifth note is always a perfect fifth from the first one. The fourth one's always a perfect fourth from the first one, and same with all the rest. Like E, like so in a different key, like if you're in G major, that would be a B, and again it would be a major third, because all major keys are spelt the same using the spelling tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. So you start on whichever root you want, and then those intervals then build all the keys, and the intervals are always the same because they always use the same intervals to be built with. Now, what I'm actually saying about all this stuff is, say you didn't have like this information, and like say you were writing a song, and you wanted, like say you're on like a B or something, like a B note, and you wanted to play a perfect fifth above it, like as a chord, or you want to play that after the B note, but you can't remember how many notes it takes to get there. So that's kind of like the only other issue with all this. It's like, oh, I want to play this interval, but I can't remember how many notes it takes. But if you always just remember, say, pretty much just remember that, because all the major keys, I'm saying they're all built the same intervals, but if you just remember like the C major key specifically, just as an example, as a reference, like if you want to go a perfect fifth higher than your B note, like you can always remember that the G is a perfect fifth above C in C major, so you know, oh, the G in C major, the C major key that I have in my head, I know that G note is a perfect fifth, which is what I want. So what do? You count up to the G, right? C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, 7 notes. So you know with this B note that you have, you need to move up 7 notes in order to get to what it is that you want. And it's the same with like say like the major third, you want to go a major third above. So it's like, okay, you got a minor second, you got a major, a minor third, and then like a major third, and it says you need to go up 4 notes. But say you didn't know that, and you just knew that in your head, and E was a major third from C, you'd be like, oh, okay, so I'll count up to E from like the C. So it's like C sharp, D, D sharp, E, 4 notes. So that's it. Just before we carry on, I forgot to mention something. Throughout the entire video, I have been saying how to go up to a certain interval from the note C. I know from rewatching this video that I said if you go from C to a B, you have to go up 11 notes, a major 7th. Now, if you want to go down to B from C, that's just 1 note because B is before C, right? So that's actually a minor 2nd. And if you want to go down to an A, so you go down B, A sharp, A, that's 3 notes, which is a minor 3rd. It doesn't matter whether you go up 3 notes from C, like if you go up 3 notes, C sharp, D, D sharp, that's a minor 3rd. If you go down 3 notes from C, B, A sharp, A, that's a minor 3rd as well. It doesn't matter which note you're going to or which note you start on. It's to do with the amount of length from where you start to where you end, essentially. So whichever note you're going to. So again, if you're counting down, all it is just the same. You just count the notes down. Like if you go down to say a G, you just count the notes. B, A sharp, A, G sharp, G. So that's 5 notes. So C down to a G is a perfect 4th, and that's it. Now, I may, if I like, because I do my lessons all just in one go, and then I find I might screw up or something. Then after turn it off and do another take. So if this video ends randomly with me just trying to explain the two things that I think are the reason why intervals are important, then just excuse that. I'll just do another take and slap these two together. But, you know, I should be fine. Right, so I'm saying, so I've taught you everything, and I'm saying that there are two reasons why I think intervals are important to like a musician. The first one is to help you figure out music by ear. If you play a note and then you play a note after it, that is an interval, that's a space, right? So every note that you've ever heard in a song, it's like they're all intervals apart. So if you can hear, like if you do like ear training and you can hear every interval, then you will be able to figure out pretty much like songs straight away. Because the thing is, right, let's take a minor second for example, right? Going back to like using like a ruler, if you go from 0 to 1, let's say, right, again, that's a minor second, you've just gone up like one note, 1 centimeter. Now if you go up 8 to 9 on the ruler, again, that would be like a minor second. If you go from 12 to 13, 28 to 29, again, it's just one, it's the same interval of space. So even though in music, if you go from a C to a C sharp, like an F to an F sharp, a B to a C, right, they will all always sound like a minor second. So even though there's lots of different minor seconds, you will still be able to, like, if you actually do some ear training, like get like a music theory app that teaches you like it will throw intervals at you, like sounds of intervals, and you have to guess which one's right. It'll give you like 4 options. If you can always guess them right and stuff, that means you'll actually be able to hear these intervals, and no matter whether you hear a minor second going from a C to a C sharp, like I say, or a D to a D sharp, you'll be able to tell what it is. You'll be able to hear like the first note and then what it's going to, so whichever intervals, in this case a minor second. So say you hear like an E note, you figure out it's an E, and then you can hear immediately that the next note is a minor second. You know that second note straight away. So that is how, I mean, this is how I first got introduced to intervals, which is from my guitar teacher. He told me this, that if you can hear all the intervals, then you can figure out like guitar solos in seconds, because you can hear each space from each note. And then the second reason why intervals are important, which I find is kind of more relevant to me because I've never really spent much time trying to figure out songs. I've always been trying to write music or get better at playing guitar or whatever. The next thing is it helps with, the thing is, every single note that you ever play, right, if you picked up an instrument and just played one note a day, then that means you never are involved with musical intervals. But if you ever play more than one note, you are using intervals constantly, right? So everything that is more than one note at a time is intervals. That's why intervals are like really important. Now if you're writing music and you find that, you know, like I've pretty much written an album of music, and my music, I write in different keys, so they kind of sound different, but I'm always doing the same thing. So you can still kind of hear this sort of similar sort of style that I have about my music, and that's because I always use the same intervals, right? Each of these intervals, when we talk about like intervals as like centimeters, it's just numbers, but we know that notes, right, when you put notes together, they like emit like a certain feeling or character. So if you have like any sort of interval, like each of these intervals will have a different character, because if you put notes together, they will emit a character. And like I say, like no matter which minor seconds you play, no matter like which major third you play, like minor sixth, they will always sound like that interval, no matter like which notes you physically use. Like it doesn't matter like where you use them, whether it's like a major second going from like a D to an E or like a G to an A, it will still sound like that will still sound like a major second, like 2 notes apart. And that always has its same character. I can tell you that a minor second, like if you put 2 notes on top of each other that are a minor second, it will sound really dark. If you use a diminished fifth, that again is another dark interval by nature. If you play a perfect fifth, which is what like power chords are on like a guitar, it sounds really consonant and like harmonious, like joyful and like peaceful, because there's no tension. So if you're always writing music, like for example, I always write music using perfect fifths and minor thirds. So it's like very pretty like consonant stuff with the minor thirds doing like, they're like sort of emotional, a bit melancholic. Like minor thirds you have in like minor keys, which is why they sound sad. Like if you have that stuff and you always use them, your music will always have this kind of character about it. So going back to why this is important, it then shows you as a composer what you do. So that in combination with sort of just trying to write more music, if you write an album and you want to write a second album, you start trying to write more music to get material for the second album, right? But then the intervals tell you what you do, and then if you want to try something different, use different intervals to get different character, to try and change how your music fundamentally sounds. You will know what it is that you're actually doing, because it gives a name to what you're actually doing with your music. So like sort of that in combination with trying to find new material, that is how you can stop your music always sounding the same and intentionally write different stuff. It's really smart, and if you can utilize this and write tons of different stuff, you could be one of the greatest artists in the world. You know, it's mad. So that is it. If you have any questions, let me know. And yeah, that's about it. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I think that's everything anyway. Yeah, so take care, all the best, and God bless.